Over the past years, stealth games has changed a lot. Some tried new ideas, others didn't last long. But there's one game that still gets it right, even nearly 2 decades later, and that's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. Now, a lot of people have considered this game to be one of, if not the best stealth games to ever exist. But me being a curious person, I want to see for myself if this was really a good stealth game, since one of my favorite video game genres was stealth. So, is this game really what people make it out to be? Well, let's find out.
The game starts off with some sort of satellite orbiting around Earth, and quickly after, it zooms into the ship, which appears to have a lot of terrorists taking quite an amount of people hostage. Then after, it shortly cuts this news broadcast and explains that Chinese and North Korean forces have boarded and blockaded a Japanese cargo ship. And that would explain why they were taking the crew of the ship hostage. Then after, it cuts to Lambert talking to a Japanese military official. Now, to clarify, I'm not entirely sure since it doesn't say who he's talking to, but he says that this blockade is an act of war, and that the NSC is trying to form a response. After this, the NSC also ordered that the Wolf, a very advanced spy ship, to close at flight speed, and that his best man, meaning Sam Fisher, would be on board. From there on, it sets up the first mission in the game, where it takes place on an island where a lighthouse is located on. Now, once I jump in, I can already see a big improvement from the last 2 games, mainly in the graphics. I mean, for a 2005 game, they sure did a good job on the textures and the realism of the environment. But moving on, I entered this cave entrance which would lead me down some tight areas around me and would have me crouch down to get to where I needed to be. But shortly after, I run into my first 2 enemies of the game. Now, since this is a stealth game and I'm not trying to make a lot of noise, I decided to take out my gun, which had already equipped a silencer. And after waiting for him to go across this wooden bridge, I shot him right in the head. And after I took my shot, my man's back had completely gone folded. And obviously, he wasn't in complete darkness. His buddy started immediately shooting at me. But quickly, I got into cover and proceeded to sneak up on him to only grab him from the back and take him into the light. And this is exactly what I had to say to him.
Anyone ever tell you that spelunking is dangerous?
Oh no! You're going to kill me, right?
Only if you say the word monkey. Now tell me something I want to know.
Ammunition and medical supplies. Check around inside the keep. They have tons of stuff in there.
Some of you guys are real helpful. Why do you have to work for the bad guys?
You're the American oppressor. You're the bad guy.
Are you gonna say monkey?
What? No!
Then this conversation is over.
After that friendly little conversation, I make my way out of there and head on over to the next area, to only hear this. Now, after quickly making my way to where I heard these noises, I came across the man that we were supposed to save, and while making my way down there, these guards began to get suspicious because they supposedly saw me. And since I'm not trying to get caught here, I quickly ran into cover and thought it'd be a great plan to take them out. My plan was to flashbang them to get them both stunned, so I could have an opportunity to kill them both. And after waiting for the perfect moment, I threw my flashbang at them, and me being pretty dumb here for some reason, I ran into the blast radius of the flashbang, and as a result, I got flashbanged. But thankfully, I did successfully kill the 2 men, and after doing so, I was brought with a sad discovery. Morgenhall, our guy that we were supposed to rescue from captivity, had died, so to pay my respects, I released him from his restraints and moved on. Upon doing so, I made my way back outside to see one guy in a tent. Now, the one cool thing that they ended up adding into this game was the ability to cut material. I mean, if that isn't a cool enough feature for a game that was made in 2005, I don't know what is. But chilling through the level, after taking down some guys, looking through people's emails, and just having a good time in general, I eventually made my way to the lighthouse. Now, when crouching over there, I happened to see a guy patrolling the area. Now, since there was a light and I was not trying to get caught, I whipped out my gun and shot out the light. And while the light was out, I took up the guy and made my way to the front door of the lighthouse. Now, once I'm here, I overhear a guy talking to someone. Now, I couldn't really hear what he was talking about, but my team supposedly did hear, and mentioned a cargo ship called the Maria Narcissa, and went on to say that it was owned and operated by Celestinian Inc., Portuguese shipping company, and that a lot of information about this was missing. Now, since it sounded really suspicious, this would ultimately set us up for our next mission. But before that, after making my way up to the top of the lighthouse, I shot the guy up there and made my way to extraction. Moving on to the next mission, we were informed that Bruce Morgenholt was eventually found on the island, and that a guy named Hugo Lacerda was involved with this whole thing. Moving on to the mission, our first objective was to retrieve the bill of lading for Lacerda's armed shipment. Now, for this mission, I was really wanting to make this as stealthy as possible, since instead of getting a game over after 3 alarms in the old games, you could now get tons of guards that are fully plated with armor. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm not trying to let that happen. Aside from that, upon moving around the ship, I had made a whistle noise to distract one of these punks. And instead of having one of them go into the pitch black abyss and being dumb as usual, vehicle, they actually decided to be smart and pull a flare out. Now, me being really surprised right now, I carefully made my way to a lower part of the ship, for them only to go down the same way as I did. And me waiting patiently for one of them to leave, dude on the right started going in the same direction as me, as if he knew where I was going. But thankfully, he did not end up seeing me. So with another two guys in front of me, I made my way past one of them and grabbed the little guy to interrogate him. And this was probably not a good time to do so, since the same guy that I'd gotten past was walking towards me. And since I had no other choice to get past him, I started firing at him. And me being pretty bad this game, I completely missed my shots and had also alerted most of the crew. So much for being stealthy. But after taking down both men, this other guy decided to come out and fire at me, for a pretty good reason. And me being in cover, I had access to my inventory, and one of the items I had were frag grenades. So with this in mind, I threw one of my grenades, and surprisingly he got out of the way just in time. This really wouldn't save his life, because this would also set me up for a knife kill. And after I'd taken them all out, I moved on to the lower parts of the ship. Now, going around the ship, I'd been informed of a side mission, and that side mission being to put trackers on some boxes. But let's be honest, I'm not trying to do that. So after ignoring to every word my team had to say, something bad came up. Turns out one of the ship's compartments was flooding, and in order to get to the bell of lading, I needed to turn on the water pump. So after crawling through this really wide fence, I made it to the room. Now, there were about 2 men in here, and one of them were directly under a metal pool. So, me noticing this, I went onto the metal pool, and now that I was right under him, I had the option to snap his neck. And me trying to be silent again, I quickly snapped his neck, but I soon realized that we were on a metal surface. And after realizing that, his body completely crashed into the metal surface and had made a huge sound. And his buddy hearing this, he pulls the alarm and quickly heads up to where I am. But me being 2 steps ahead, I go back onto the pool and also snap his. I mean, you'd think he'd pull a flare out and aim it at the pole so he could see better. Then again, this game was made in 2005, so they at least have an excuse. But after turning on the pump, I made it into one of the flooded rooms, and I found the bill of lading. Then after, for our next objective, we were to obtain the ship transit letters for Lacerda's shipment. So after throwing frag grenades, praying no one shoots as there's a gas leak in this room,
Fire inspector, and I'm worried that you or one of your stupid friends might try and squeeze a shot off of here.
and doing all the fun stuff, I happened to run into the ship's captain. And since he could have some useful information, I take out whatever this monstrosity is, and after doing so, I grab the captain from the dark and interrogate him.
I hear you have a special passenger tonight.
What?
I'm the guy who's here to cash the checks Lacerda's been writing. Where is he?
That son of a... He was provoking my men, so I gave him my own cabin to shut him up.
That's very kind of you.
Be careful. He brought some personal bodyguards.
If I'm being honest, I think that was getting a little too boring to listen to. Now, after finding where Lacerda was, I made my way over there, and after arriving, our new objective was to kill him. While waiting for him to come to me, he decided to get up and get a refill of drinks. And while he was occupied, I took him with me, had a pretty serious talk, and killed him. And upon doing so, I almost ended up getting killed, and completed my primary objectives and making it to extraction. For the next mission, we'll be breaking into a bank, but before that, the game cuts to another news broadcast, this time featuring Amuro Deshiro Otomo, the head of Japan's newly formed Information Self-Defense Force. He's giving Japan's official response to the escalating crisis with China and North Korea. Aside from the important information, we jump right into the mission. Now, our primary objective were to enter the bank, so with this in mind, while moving to the back of the bank, I wanted to try to go in the bank through the roof. So once I made it to the back of the bank, I climbed up this ladder which would lead us to the roof, but to actually get into the bank, we would need to unlock this glass dome. So after finding a breaker box and opening the glass dome, I rappelled my way down to the bank, but while doing this, I had been informed that a laser grid had been turned on for security reasons. So when I'd successfully gotten in the bank, I had used my gun to temporarily disable a laser. And from there on, I'd also had an anonymous person that would guide me through the steps on how to break into the vault. Speaking of which, to actually get into the vault, we would need to disable all 3 authorization locks. The first lock happened to be in the president's office. So while I was making my way over there, I happened to see 2 men, and one of these men were putting on some sort of keypad lock. So after taking care of both men and entering the code for the door, I turned off the first authorization lock. Now, with 2 more to go, upon heading over to turn off the next one, I'd happened to see another laser grid blocking my way. And the interesting thing that I saw was this guard was walking through it just fine. So with this in mind, I decided to grab the guy and walk with him through the laser grid. And after pulling off that really smart move, I had another one up ahead. So after completing this mini challenge, I make it to this one area which appears to have one room that was yet again locked with another keypad. So I'd whistled at the door to distract one of these guys that were in the room. And once they came out, I'd pulled out my frag grenade, waited for them to go back in the room, and by pulling a really smart move, I threw my frag grenade in the room and shut the door. Now, all but one had died, and obviously he was not happy, so he kicks the door down with rage, and I kill him. obviously. So after this really fun part, I go into this room, turn off the surveillance system, and disable the second authorization lock. Now, with one more to go, this next one wasn't so far from where I was. So upon hacking this keypad and breaking into another office which appeared to have the last authorization lock, I eventually found the lock and disabled it. Now with all 3 locks disabled, this opened the entrance to the vault, but before we could actually get into the vault, we need some tools. And thankfully, they were already not that far away from the actual vault. So after obtaining these tools, I break the locks from the vault, then after I am instructed to put an explosive charge on the vault door. Then after doing so, I set off the explosive, and finally, I make my way inside the vault. Now, after obtaining a grand total of $50 million, I extracted, therefore completing the mission. So for this video, that will be the last mission that I'll be playing. And if I'm being completely honest, I've already played this throughout the whole game. And my honest rating on this game would have to be a 9 out of 10. I mean, the levels to the graphics, all the way to the mechanics, just to give me an awesome stealth experience. And if you would also like to check out this game for yourself, I will link it down in the description. But anyways, if you don't mind, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. But I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.